All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today, where we're going to be talking a little bit about the next generation classroom and transforming teaching and learning. We definitely want to know all of your wonderings, your ideas that you have for redesign. ISTE's been pretty inspirational so far, so we know that there's been ideas swirling around in your minds that might be around extended learning time. To address gaps that might be around sharing resources for co-teachers or course offerings, creating new options for learners. It might be about master schedule. Wherever your wonderings and ideas are for redesign, we would love to hear about them, make sure that we can incorporate them into our conversation today. We recognize that we're ushering in a renaissance moment in education, that we have the opportunity and privilege to redesign for equity and redesign for possibilities. And the road behind us has been tremendously hard, and the road ahead holds so much promise. So we're excited that you're joining to hear a little bit about from myself and Dr. Lance Ford today. Quick intro to our agenda for the session. We'll introduce ourselves, we'll talk a little bit about class, and then we'll get into the meat of our content. So I'm Jason Bedford. I'm the Vice President of K-12 here at Class Technologies. The last almost 25 years have been at the intersection of teaching and learning and technology. Started my career in the classroom, have had the privilege of leading some amazing ed tech companies over the years, and my last few years have been in a consultancy where I've had the chance to work really closely with districts, thinking about the ideas of redesign, thinking about how to advance personalized learning, and a lot of virtual learning walks over the last couple of years. And that's where I kind of had that big aha that technology is an inhibitor to some of the awesome upskilling and reskilling we've been doing with teachers. And class has invested in designing the classroom of the future and how to bring synchronous learning into a new paradigm. So super excited to share with you guys just a little bit about that. And I'm with my esteemed colleague, Lance Ford. Lance, do you mind sharing a little bit about your background and your accomplishments?
Well, sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Lance, Dr. Ford. Hey, you. I told Jason when he asked me what to call me, I said, I don't care what you call me as long as when it's time to eat, you call me. And as you see, Bonnie, I am a big fan of the crawfish. So anytime, anywhere. What I do is teach. That's what I've been doing for 27 years of my life. And I find myself in a small rural school district in southeast Oklahoma, where I have been blessed to work for almost the last 2 decades. It's been great to be here. I'm the music teacher. No, mobilize, that kind of thing. And I also teach online for a regional college. And then for Zoom, I get to help teachers who are incorporating Zoom and Zoom rooms, some of the technology you see around me, as well as amazing technologies from folks like Class directly into engaged learners. And that's what we're hoping to really talk about today, is how do we take the next generation classroom experience and move beyond the whiz-bang technology and dive down into what's really important, and that's reaching all of our learners. So thanks for having me, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks for that great intro. So quickly, I wanted to share a little bit about at Class. We know that there were thousands of teachers teaching online pre-pandemic, and then all of a sudden we had the opportunity to learn from and with hundreds of thousands of teachers about what their synchronous instruction experience was like with video conferencing. And there was a lot missing. So as you can see the image on the left, it's what great teachers were doing in their physical classrooms. And there was big gaps that technology was unable to satisfy as we moved to the pandemic conditions. And at Class, we put the best product people and the best computer science people and engineers kind of against this problem and this challenge around how do we think about really designing video conferencing for teachers? How do we make it work to deeply engage learners so that it feels as close as possible to the brick and mortar classrooms we're so used to delivering our instruction in? And Our CEO, Michael Chasen, was really thoughtful about bringing the brightest minds in education and in technology together from his experiences at Blackboard to kind of solve this problem of what's missing and how do we start redesigning technology to really support teachers. And so that's the nexus of class, and that's where we started from. It was this idea of synchronous learning being so much penultimately important, that relationship and connection between teachers and students and how the classroom is facilitated, and taking the lumpiness out of all of the experiences we had in pandemic learning and redesigning the technology to really work for the teachers so that their content and their relationships with kids would ultimately change. So that's a little bit about us at class, and I think you can tell my level of passion for the work that we do and the opportunities that we see ahead. So as we think about transforming teaching and learning, we really wanted to kind of unpack this a little bit today and set some context. And as we move into all of our post-COVID instruction, and we start looking ahead, what are the ways we're going to take advantage of the experiences that we had through virtual and synchronous? So we see opportunities for flexibility for both teachers and for students. Flexibility as to where if you're an amazing teacher that's needed to plug a hole for a course offering, awesome. Why do you have to live or commute? You can really engage your learners from anywhere, anytime. Flexibility for students. We see access to more courses, to different teachers, to elongating time for academic supports that isn't structured inside the brick and mortar schedule. Really innovating to address equity and opportunity gaps. As we had brighter lights shown on our systems, we recognize there is tremendous opportunity for system redesign for the purpose of equity. And advancing that work, this is the time, this is the moment, this is our time to impart change. And so I hope you draw a little inspiration for some of the stories and ideas that you're going to hear in this next segment. As we look categorically across what folks are ready for today, we recognize that all leaders, all schools, all teachers have made investments in the kind of digital curriculum that they have, that we've all learned a lot, we've been through a lot. We had to, in the moment, take bite-sized PD to grasp onto all the new tools we were asking to deliver instruction through. We've had device expenditures, and we see this kind of 3 R's. One thing I might hope you take away is this continuum of the 3 R's, where it's revive, redesign, and reimagine. And you don't have to be all the way on the other end as you're doing this work of the spectrum to be at reimagine. So revive is about schools that are looking for low lift and ways to take the learnings of the immediate past and apply them to their new scenario. And that might be with learning acceleration, learning recovery. It might be about continuing on with learning continuity. It might be advancing 21st century skills. In the redesign bucket, this is cross-campus, dual enrollment connections. How are we making these opportunities possible for our amazing kids? How are we thinking about off-cycle instruction, moments like summer school, and other off-cycle opportunities where we can increase flexibility and where people are learning from? And then reimagine is this on the continuum, this whole opportunity we see of building a new path forward in education. So no matter where you sit on that continuum, not going back to the complete status quo and thinking of these moments and who we're going to redesign for, and being really intentional about our learners at the margins, our learners most impacted by a lack of choice, when our structures are so fixed that we can't change them to accommodate our learners and our teachers. We have an opportunity for the school systems work that we're talking about today. So I want to tee up a couple questions for Dr. Ford to chat through, and then pepper some in from the chat. So please use that to bring your wonderings and ideas into the conversation today. So Lance, I'd love to hear a little bit about lessons you learned over this past year in how you were delivering instruction that you think are important to apply moving forward.
Well, I think the number one lesson coming out of this is that parents, and I'm in a K-12, y'all, parents expect options now. They expect flexibility. Things are no longer industrial age style of delivery. I mean, line them up, one t-shirt size fits all, and somebody else deal with the ones who are struggling, and somebody else deals with the ones who are advanced, and everybody shows up every morning at 8 and stays till 3. Those days are done. Now, I'm not saying there won't be elements of that. I'm not saying that there will be some schools that that is their only flavor format. But what we have found, and I'm in a town, I know this sounds weird because y'all have got more students in your high school graduating class than I got people in this town. There are 800 people who live in this town. There are 670-ish kids who go to school here. 60% of them, hang on for it, don't live here because parents expect options. And those parents have found that their local school district may not be providing them all the options and opportunities they would like for their students to have. So I have been very blessed, fortunate, lucky, Jason, whatever your worldview is, to be in a place where administration says, let's reach everybody. Let's prepare ourselves to do what it takes to get those, you mentioned the fringe or the edge students. Let's get those fringe edge students just as involved as the people who we would, quote, normally, unquote, service in our geo. And when we do that, then we become an opportunity and an opportunistic group of educators. That also, though, comes with its own action-packed set of challenges. Lifelong learning for our faculty members, the evolution of technology, making sure technology is transparent in that. But those are I guess, coming back, that's the number one thing. I guess close on the heels of that, Jason, really is, and I see where a lot of you all are joining us from some fairly remote locations. I know it's early in the morning, Angela. Thank you so much for joining us from Guam. And we got folks on the other side of the planet joining us into the evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But part of the challenge where I live is simple connectivity. Just Jason literally getting connected to the information superhighway for a lot of my students can be a real issue. And so we've had to get creative. We can talk about some of those things that we've done if we want to. We've had to get creative to reach them where they are and look at, in some cases, what is the lowest common denominator of still being able to individualize and differentiate education. So thank you so much, Kay, for sharing that. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to quote that. I'm so glad that the live experience like the one we're having today, in your case specifically Zoom, allowed those students to be able to keep on keeping on. I don't know if you all saw it in the chat or not, but somebody the other day told me, are you ready for the return to school? My immediately smart aleck response was, we never left. We've been teaching, right? I don't know what you've been doing in your job, but teachers have been teaching. Now, physically, we may have been in a different geo. I got it. But as far as what we do, we kept on keeping on. Even through summer school, you keep on keeping on. So I guess that's how I would lay into that. Do you guys see the questions that Jason has up there? Do you have any feedback on lessons you've learned as a part of this pandemic experience? And the second question, which aspects of learning technologies best support students who may not thrive in face-to-face? I'm going to address that for just a second while you're formulating your answers, putting that in. Jason, for me, when we lean on the conversation around equity, we really have to look at who the students are personality-wise, what learner styles are, but just as importantly for me, it's a cultural expectation. And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right. Nayambura is saying it absolutely correctly. Putting those students first means that 90% of my kids are Native American. It's not right or wrong. It's just where I live. 80% are, for those of you who live in the States, free and reduced. Average household income in our community is south of $25,000 annually, right? So a lot of those students are coming out of situations where they are not expected to be able to be visually contributing or even verbally contributing. It becomes paramount that we provide them opportunity to contribute to the class verbally without saying a word. Maybe it's this with chat. Maybe it's polling. Maybe it's a small group experience. Hey, maybe it's me allowing them to have access to what we're going to talk about today for the visual side and having them present it. Maybe it's them annotating on content. There's a lot of ways, Jason, to draw those students in and use that as we're using the chat today as the springboard to be able to have a conversation. Oh, Lindley, thank you so much. I'm so glad you put energetic, because I think that comment around energy is something we all have to be cognizant of. The initial fear factor, Jason, in this is, I'm on camera, I'm 210 pounds, I'm 52 years old, I've got a bald spot the size of a silver dollar on the back of my head. What happens if I bend over? All of those things, people are going, OMG, I just want to talk at them. And I really don't care if they weigh in. I really don't care if they're paying attention. I just got to get the content out there. And so to see Lindley say, hey, it's about building the excitement, keeping it energetic and keeping it lively, I think it's great. Jason, you see those messages. What's jumping out to you in that list? I think you're muted, my friend. There you go.
It's the saying of 2020 and 2021. So I'm scrolling through here, taking some notes and trying to pull up some themes. So I think one of the as we kind of came into this session, the music that was playing was Journey's "Don't Stop Believing." And what would you share with folks that feel like they're less inspired now than they were 18 months ago? And where are you drawing your inspiration from as like a phenomenally creative digital educator, but educator first, right? And where are you drawing that inspiration from these days?
Well, Jason, you're the meaning in my life. You're the inspiration.
Sorry. Okay, we'll close with that song.
Okay. All right. I got you. I honestly draw my inspiration from the kids. And this is so funny. Right this second, while I'm talking to you on this camera, I have another device immediately to the right. And I know if I said, give you 5 guesses as to what content is on that device rolling through, everybody would be like, oh, I think it's this, oh, I think it's that. What it is the musical we delivered in the spring and digital still snapshots of my kids on that screen immediately to the right. They are the reason that I do the things that I do. To see this, like right now, Anna is in the middle of the page. She's holding a dog. We did Legally Blonde. She's holding Bruiser, right? She's grinning ear to ear on that screenshot. And there's a standing ovation going on in front of her. To watch those kids come to life, learn to grow, get excited, get up in front, and really become the human beings that we need so desperately on this planet. Non-polarizing, but a desire to come together. It's the students that I draw inspiration from. I honestly, as a lifelong learner, Jason, I draw a lot of inspiration from what is being said right now in the chat. So I guess it's the teachers around me too, right? Talking about Dora coming back to Kay, and they're just building. You guys are building a community on the fly. Unfortunately, I don't know that there's a way to continue to foster this community after our little time together here, but you guys are learning from each other right now, encouraging each other. Thank you, Kelly, for keeping that encouragement. I can tell in your heart, in your spirit, you're a teacher and you're building that encouragement, building folks up. That's where I'm drawing inspiration as well, Jason. So the teachers around me and the students are really keeping me up.
Love that. Thank you so much. And like as we think about students that have in face-to-face classroom environments, that either feel microaggressions or have anxiety with school. Have you seen any of those learners? Is there a specific somebody that comes to mind for you that you saw blossom and thrive in virtual settings over the last months?
Yeah, I think that for so many of us who are physically in the classroom, like you all, we find, and I'm so sorry, Genevieve, that you're in your third wave of lockdown. It's just it's a mess. What I find is those students who feed off of the physical presence of other students, and they know who they are, right? They would never say that, but that's how they get their sense of accomplishment. That's how they bolster who they are. What I've tried to do in this world is empower them to be leaders visually and verbally from their own environment. I know that Dora's saying that it's taking a lot of one-to-one to pull some of our students out. Those students who might otherwise, let's be honest with each other, be discipline problems, or at least keep me on my toes in my class, they kind of at the beginning shrunk back because they didn't understand how to address the audience, I guess. So pulling them in meant empowering them, maybe not fully to team teach, but at least to be able to verbalize some concepts. Sometimes that's done in small groups, maybe in a Zoom meeting. Sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, Jason, it's something as simplistic as, hey, I put this in our Google Classroom. It's our topic of conversation. It's an image. It's a small presentation. It's a spreadsheet that we're going to punch some numbers into. I'd like Sue to drive that today. Why don't you share your screen and let's go? Right? So having them be a part of the conversation tactily, I think is huge. And Ruth, thank you for bringing this up. Acknowledging those introverts, it's so easy to turn that camera off, mute that microphone, become a wallflower. And there have been some home life situations also that necessitate that, not just, the fact that some of these kids are introverted. But when we can empower them with introverted tools, I'm using chat as an example, not that all my people on chat are introverts, but something that gives some anonymity to their physical appearance, but still empowers their voice. I think that is really how we draw that other end of the spectrum in, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Love those stories and the connections to everything we see flowing in the chat. And Ruth, thanks for teeing up the acknowledge introverts. So we'll just some quick stats as we move on to our next big theme here. Just recognizing that 1 in 5 districts are going to adopt a virtual school to support these learners that really thrived for the first time or really felt that they had voice or more choice. They developed ways to represent themselves in meaningful ways and felt like their learning was accelerated. 55% of schools have all adopted new online accessible curriculum, instructional materials over the last 18 months. And so if we look at the instructional core and look at the relationship between teachers and content and students and content and teachers and students, this gives us a place to start with our redesign possibilities. And this idea of the next generation classroom. I'd love to just hear a little bit on when you think about the next generation classroom, Lance, the things you've learned over the last year, and you start building a vision for why change, why now, and how to sustain that change, not just in your classroom, but within the hundreds and thousands of teachers that you connect with all the time. Where do you see the future of education technology going? Like, give us your futurist, pull your crystal ball out a little bit and show us where you think that future of education technology is going, and then connect it back to an aha moment you had over the last year.
So the necessity for technology and the accessibility to that technology, I think, are huge ahas for all of us right now. and I know that we saw some of our friends here who are, because of third wave of pandemic or whatever, are physically still geo-dispersed, okay? When we were all geo-dispersed by mandate, by necessity, it became very easy to be democratic in the way that we engage. In other words, everybody appeared to be going through the same sorts of struggles. As we look at what seems to be a trend towards hybrid, high flex, sometimes you're here, sometimes you're there, you may be ill, we may all have to disperse. When we start talking about high flex, part of the challenge really is, how do all the learners still access the content in the same way, regardless of the geo in which they find themselves? Realizing that maybe 25, 30% of those kids are physically in the room. Maybe some are physically remote live. And don't forget, there's going to be some who are going to have a problem and who are going to need to join asynchronously later. Okay. Sure. Now, this is something that's really, really near and dear to my heart. And I wish I had a crystal ball to say, I'm going to wave this magic wand, and this is what the next iteration of technology is going to do to fully solve that problem. I don't have that. Okay. But from a practical perspective, I spent 4 years of my life in this chair working on that doctorate degree from the University of Oklahoma. I'm 7 hours round trip drive time from there. I'm on the Arkansas-Oklahoma border. Some of the teaching I saw was phenomenal. Some of the teaching I saw was a teacher walking in with fresh off the copier printouts for us to review, physically distributing them in class, and then going, yeah, you guys. Man, I think let me see if I can email that out. Maybe I put it in our learning management system. All the while, these guys have already got it. They're already processing it. They're formulating their opinions. They're having sidebar conversations. We still don't have the content yet, right? So this next gen of classroom technology is going to necessitate that, regardless of geo dispersion and financial inequities on the part of the learners, everyone accesses the content in the same way first. I would say at the same time. I guess technically, if you're watching this later, it would be at the same time as the course unfolded for you, right? Your real-time experience with the content, okay? And I think that as a part of that, we're going to really have to look at how we ease this burden on Genevieve. I'm watching this chat unfold in the background as she's talking about them having to be dispersed and use technology and coming back and leaning on traditional tools. But now I'm dispersed again using technology. Now I'm coming back and leaning on tech. We got to figure out, Jason, how those two worlds collide. And it starts with things real simple, like what's going on right now with me. I can't stand behind a desk and teach into an eyeball of a camera with an earbud on. I'm the music teacher. I got to get out. I got to move around. And I expect the technology to be transparent enough to allow me to do that. If I have a student who talks like this in my classroom because they're just kind of really introverted, I need the microphone to take care of that for my remote learners so they can all experience the same thing that we're experiencing here and not be left out as a part of the conversation. Right? That's baby steps, Bob. That's where we got to be able to do. So that's my initial feedback on that thought process. What are you seeing happen here in the chat that's really kind of drawing your attention to that conversation?
Yeah, I think it's about how do we create both a vision and a path for teachers, so there's less elasticity. So when we have gone back to school in person, we're not going back to school as it always has been. That the investments in upskilling and reskilling teachers and in all of their technology that's at their fingertips now, I think where the chat has been for the last 10 minutes has been around how do we create both vision and path for them to be less elastic. All of the in-person capabilities are wonderful, but if we're not both redesigning for the future of learning while scaffolding the teachers and folks that are gravitating back to the way they always have done things, because those are our habits. That's what we know. So what are some things that you're sharing with others that might be both inspirational and directive to really support those kind of teachers right now?
So in my classroom next door, y'all would laugh if I took you over there. There's a marker board. I use a marker board. Okay. It's okay. I feel like I'm in an AA meeting. I use a marker board, right? And so I use a marker board there. I have an electronic whiteboard in there. Now the electronic whiteboard's been here for quite a while because we don't have budget. I don't know about your school, okay, but we count squares of toilet paper that faculty members use. Okay, not really. But we do count reams of paper that faculty members use. So we're tight. So here's the way the scaffolding works in my world, Jason. I bring in a device that empowers my room to do what this room is doing. I set it on top of something that I've been using for the last 8 years. This is a smart board. The first thing that happens is I get the daily announcements. It happens when I walk in the morning at 7:30, between classes as the bell is ringing. Students are seeing what's in the cafeteria, when the ball game's going to happen. I get ready to teach class, right? I use the same smartboard skills that I have, and I just start to do the whole thing that I do when I give notes. Now, my notes may look a little different to yours. Most of my notes may look something like this or this or this, right? Those are my notes. But in this world of Zoom being where we lived for the last 12 months, bringing this whiteboard experience is the Zoom whiteboard experience back in. Now, I don't know how y'all feel about this next comment. Somebody's going to throw something at me because you're going to go, I'm not paid to do that. No, this group won't, but several of the teachers I deal with will. Learning, surprise, does not just happen between 8 and 8:50 Monday through Friday in my classroom. Oh, it's hard for me to believe that I don't have to be present for learning to take place. But it goes on, right? And so part of what I'm trying to do is build the same type of community around this content that you're building here today by pushing all the notes from class, all the feedback, the whiteboards the students have created into the Zoom chat for our class, so that, I know I'm kind of small, so this is going to look really rough, but I'm going to get really small for a minute. So that when a student logs in tonight, or maybe has been broken apart into a small group, they have access to that content and their peers by simply typing in a chat. It may be 9:30. I may go, hey, y'all are off in left field here. Hang on. Let me reel that back in. And if we need more definition, because now parent Sue is looking over the shoulder of her daughter or her son, they're looking over their shoulder as they're trying to help them with that. Maybe a quick video call to escalate and just go is what I need to do. So
what I like about that, Lance, is that you're using the technology to actually start building a new habit, right? So we recognize that our old habits are where we gravitate back to, but this idea of creating new habits are taking those small things that are 1% changes and introducing them in a routine, doing them in a repeated fashion, just like putting your notes on the whiteboard behind you, dropping them in a chat so that they're accessible at a later time, and building that new habit of how to use that. So I think the big takeaway there, and for the team, is this idea of a tiny, what are the small incremental changes that build that path over time, rather than asking for folks to go back and relive their COVID experiences, their online teaching experiences. What are the 1, 2, no more than 3 things that they can bring back and make sure that they're implementing with consistency, with fidelity, and on a repeated basis, so that new habit forms, and then we can build on those. So instructional coaches that are in this room, principals, leaders, and us as teachers, we have an opportunity to support each other and support and think about ourselves about what are these small things we want to implement, build habits around that are actually scaffolding for us to usher in bigger change. So I love that.
Mahmoud actually, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not, Lindley commented on his comment, which I think is mission critical to this, Jason. Leadership that is not, wow, it sounds terrible. For those of you who are leaders, don't take this personally. Leadership that's not willing to demonstrate and engage with their learners, who are those of us who call ourselves faculty members, leveraging this tool, it becomes very difficult for a faculty member to usurp where they are with the way that we engage our learners, right? So for those of you who are leaders, please, I'm begging you, get your phone out and engage with your faculty members in the same way you're asking your faculty members to engage with learners, because it becomes a lot easier for your faculty to extrapolate what that looks and feels like when they're sitting the role of learner from you or team member from you as you're guiding that process. So just a side note there to all of our leadership that is involved in today's conversation, Jason.
Well, speaking of leaders, we have this quote from a superintendent in Illinois that really spoke to me, and just want to make sure that we're sharing this little bit of inspiration with everyone else. Teresa Rouse says, it's time that colleagues leading districts, large and small across the country, work to ensure that every single student in our schools has the learning environment that best fits their individual learning styles. These are the kind of systemic changes and options we need to cultivate. And we need to bring voice to how to create these possibilities. So I love this one, and we all have a part to play. We're going to close out with kind of redefining the student experience, the learner experience, whether that's an adult learner or the students in your classrooms. And Lance, maybe you can just share a little bit about, what drove you to want to change the synchronous learning experience for kids that you serve. You talked a little bit about getting your doctorate, what those experiences were for you, and how you felt a little bit alienated, a little bit behind your in-person peers that were learning. And then maybe just close this out with some key metrics that you're improving both rigor and engagement. I see these as rungs on a ladder that are we have to get students not just to show up, but find meaning in their learning, find a sense of belonging in our environments, whether they're in person or virtual, feel connected both to the curriculum and to the body of people they're doing this learning with. It's social. And so what are the things you look for maybe in that rigor and engagement ladder to see if your practice is leveling up over time, or are those indicators that online synchronous is working? And maybe just close this out with a little bit of inspiration for like what drove you to continue to shift your practices.
So there's one word that answers the first bullet here at our school. Opportunity. When you're confronted with the demographic that we have, I'll just tell you a little story. I hadn't been here 3 weeks, maybe 4. I walking down the high school hall, big strapping kid, probably 6'2", came walking up to me, coming out of class, and I said, "Hi, I'm Mr. Ford. What's your name?" He told me. I said, "Man, it's great to meet you. What grade are you in?" "Man, I'm a senior." "Sweet. What are you going to do next year?" His direct response to me, Jason, was this. Now, I had been here less than a month. "I'm going to draw a check." Now, I know globally there are a lot of people who are in a world of hurt right now, and I am certainly not casting aspersions on anyone who needs financial assistance. I help people all the time that I can, all right? But his whole aspiration of life was the government was just going to write him a check and he was going to do what he wanted to do. And I think when he said that, of course, several emotions erupted inside me. But the one that got me the most was sadness. And I said, after I processed what I was feeling and before I opened my mouth, when I finally did open my mouth, I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, it's what my dad does, what my granddad does, it's what my aunt does, what my uncle does." In other words, this is a cultural way of life that this is all I know, right? When we have the opportunity to meet students where they are with learning experiences that open their eyes to a world beyond their personal experiences, we change generations. Today, tomorrow, and into the future. If you would have told me a decade ago, I would be presenting at ISTE via video on the power of distributed learning, I would have laughed you into scorn. I'm still a music teacher today, right? But thanks to tools like Zoom that have evolved our understanding of what is possible, of our comprehension of what can be done, right? And those of you who are going in the chat right now about all the amazing things you've done, you do those things because you are passionate about teaching and learning and providing opportunities for your learners. Leveraging the live synchronous environment means I can closely, not 100%, I'll agree, I can closely align my live classroom practices, my shoulder-to-shoulder classroom practice, my focus classroom practices with what I do in a classroom. And that live synchronous learning brings it to life like no other. We were very fortunate to spend an hour with the lead singer from a rock band that you would know if I said it. They're a global, amazing band. And it literally changed 3 of my kids' lives. One of them came out of there going, man, I had no idea that people like that experience the challenges that he's talking about. I experienced those challenges. So when we do those sorts of things, we're reading the 70% of the language that we typically don't get, and that's the body language. So synchronous video, huge. What are specific practices that others can adopt? You all have already said it. One-to-one, building relationship, reaching out, having informal times as well as formal times of learning. You don't have to have a lesson every time you get together. Okay? I mean, come on. Can we just have a campfire come to Jesus conversation around anything? I don't care. Build relationship into lives. The way you do it every day at school is between classes when you're standing out in the hall. When you go to that football game, you go to that basketball game. They see you at the prom, right? Those are the moments that your kids take with them beyond school. I know it's hard for me to believe that they may not remember what a quarter note is for the rest of their life, okay? But they'll never forget some of the things that we've been able to pull off when we've worked together. Okay.
Well, I love that because the informal and the formal and where they meet and the opportunity to leverage technology to extend both the relationships and the dialogue. So where you kind of teed up this idea of not having to have a lesson plan, I think we all know that. I think we all recognize that. But when you're having to be in front of an audience, you feel like reverting to a stage on the stage and being the purveyor of content, pushing that out to everyone, is delivering instruction. And to really get to those DOK level 2s and 3s and come up that arc of rigor, we need a conversation. And so just like we were doing in this session today, so many wonderings, so many great ideas, so many wins that are being shared in the flow of this chat as we've gone through, and just being able to open up breakout rooms. Like there's functionality we're missing here that class would obviously bring to change the paradigm of what's possible, but having that conversation and getting students to engage with each other, or adult learners to engage with each other around a problem of practice, and do it in a way that really allows for folks not just to have their questions on the table, but to come up that arc of rigor means that we're going to have a level of understanding around the content, and then deeply engage with each other to problem solve. So I love that, and I think that's an awesome place to start closing things out. So thank you for that. The last couple of facts I wanted to share with y'all was redesigning instruction. As we look at the data over the last few years, not just pandemic, but pre-pandemic, we recognize that personalized learning has huge wins, and we recognize that in the time we're coming into, this idea of learning loss, we need to have gains in retention as we serve those students. It's just we cannot continue to assume that slower and more time means we're going to have acquisition of knowledge and the application of that knowledge. And so really want to encourage you guys to think about the possibilities of where virtual synchronous can sit in your world as you're supporting learners who might have had gaps that have formed. And we'll wrap up on time there. So thanks for all the awesomeness in the chat. Thank you for your engagement. And Lance, thank you for your inspiration, your big ideas, and the things that you've learned that we can then carry forward to us. So we'll wrap it up there, and please be inspired, and please don't stop believing as you head on out today.